In today's show, we're going to talk about using the PowerApps Azure Blob Storage connector. We're going to talk about how to set it up, how to use it to store your files out there from PowerApps, how to pull files back, how to access them via the browser, and just a bunch of really cool things about this connector, which, by the way, is the fastest way to get files in and out of PowerApps that I've found so far. So, should be pretty fun. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. In today's show, we're going to talk about using the PowerApps Azure Blob connector. So one of the things I have struggled with since I've started using PowerApps is getting files in and out of PowerApps isn't always the greatest experience. There's several different ways we can do it, but none of them do I truly love. You can use the attachments control inside of a form to save files to SharePoint list items. But then if you want to move them over to a document or a picture library, you got to use Flow. Sometimes we store files straight to SQL. So SQL has some different file types. There's some different methodologies for doing that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of pokey. Just not ideal because SQL is not really meant to store files, if we're being honest with each other. So did a little homework, and thanks to an article written by my buddy Evan Chalky back from May, which I told him I was going to do this video back in May. So I'm a little behind. Just, 9 months, 6 months, 7 months, whatever the math might be. Anyway, we're going to make this video and we're going to talk about how to use the Azure Blob Storage connector, because not only is it super fast, but it's also a super cheap place to store your stuff. And there's a lot of additional functionality that we're going to get by storing our files out there that solves some of the problems, right? And this is brought to us thanks to one of our customers, Daryl, who's I'm making watch this video because he keeps asking me about better ways to do this stuff. So I did a bunch of research on his behalf. We're going to turn that into a video, and I'm going to make Daryl watch the video. So, hi, Daryl. All right, that's enough blah, blah, blah. Let's jump over and check it out. And so I thought maybe the first way to check this thing out is we'll go over here and look at this app that I made. I called it, very fancily, the Upload Speed Tester. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to say I want to tap to add a picture. And remember, this add a picture control can do both images, but you can also hit the little thing here and say, I want to do all files, and it'll give you the ability to see all the files. But if we go over here, I'm going to change the details. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take, let's do all files. I think I got a nice 3 meg file I like. Scroll down here. And so I'm going to take this 3.3 file and say open. And so that's going to attach it, right? PowerApps can't show me the image because it's a Word document. It's not an actual image. But so I'm going to click on Save to Azure Blob Storage. And that 3 meg file sitting here while I'm streaming went in 2.9. If we do again, it went 1.1. Do again, so 5.5. I can tell you that typically, I don't know, last round of testing I was doing when my kids were using the internet, about 1.4 seconds was about how long it was taking. So you can see it had spikes. The first one was a little slow, but then it had a super speed one, 5.5. And this isn't cache. This was more about my machine waking up, the internet, blah, 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 blah. Let's take that same file and save it to SQL storage. So we're going to press the button. And we'll talk about in a later video how I built this app, and we're going to use this for different things. But as you can see, it is still going. And typically speaking, I have found that this takes, well, in this case, it took just shy of 10 seconds. Let's hit it again. But I found, that these tests are taking anywhere from 10 times as long to save it to SQL versus Azure Blob Storage. And a lot of this is going to depend on the size of your SQL database. And by size, I don't mean like the amount of space in there, but the Azure Blob or the Azure SQL database as a service, you can choose, the basic tier. And if you do that, it takes forever to upload a 3 meg file. Or I think right now I'm running on the $30 a month, the S1 tier. And so as you kind of adjust that, you're going to see that the times change. But you can see that even best case scenario, my worst case versus its best case, we're still more than 2 times faster to save that 3 meg file. So hopefully when I kind of release all this, I'm going to put together a spreadsheet that shows a whole bunch of numbers. But basically what you can see here is it feels like it's a lot faster. And on average right now, it's looking like almost 5 times faster, or a little more than 5 times faster to save the file to Azure Blob Storage than SQL. So, woo. All right, that's enough of that. And, and like you can probably poke holes and say, well, you didn't compare it to whatever. Gut feel and these numbers tell me Azure Blob Storage is faster. So let's go talk about how we configure that. I think the first thing we need to do is we need to set up an Azure Blob Storage account. So over here, I am in my Azure environment. I'm just going to go out to the home screen so you can kind of feel, where I'm at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say up here on the left, I'm going to say I want to create a resource. And then it happens that storage account is right here. So I'm going to click on storage account. And so it's going to ask me what subscription resource group I want to put those in. If you're not familiar with that stuff, just take what it gives you. What is your storage account name? So this is what the name is. I want to reference this, and I'm going to call this PowerApps 911 video, like that. What's interesting, right, is this has to be a proper name, and it has to be all in lowercase. So it took me like 4 tries to name it the first time, but that name right there will work. What location, right? What Azure data center do I want to be in? So East US, I think North Central US is probably closer to me, so I'll use that one. Do I want to do the standard or the performance tier? What type of account do I want? Replication. We're just going to take all of these as the defaults, right? Because this video is not about learning the details of Azure Blob Storage. There's a lot to learn there. It's just about getting this up and running for SharePoint. And you'll also see that the pricing, based on what checkboxes you hear, they vary greatly. But I mean, I think you can get it down to like 6 cents per gig per month. So a little bit of, some good decisions here around deploying and choosing. You can get get this storage for literally pennies. All right, so I'm going to say next. These are more questions it's asked me. Are secure transfers required? Yep. What networks do I want to let them? I'm going to let all networks, but you could definitely lock down the storage. And then if you're doing data lake stuff, which I barely understand, you could turn that on, but I don't need any of that. So we're going to say next. Tags is a way in Azure to organize and search and filter all your resources. I don't need to mess with any of that. So next. This screen is going to validate that I have set up and answered all its questions well. I did. So we're going to click on create. And then this is going to go and create me a blob storage. And if you don't have an Azure account, then when you first got in here, it would have let you sign up for a free trial. I think you get like $200, some free stuff here, I don't know, lots of free stuff. But at this point in your life, we almost all need to have an Azure account for one reason or another. So go ahead and get that set up. All right, and this is going to run for, I don't know, about 30 seconds or so. So I'm going to hit pause, and I'll see you as soon as it finishes. Okay, it took about 34 seconds. It then rounded itself down to 30 seconds, so it looked cool on the screen. But so now we've got one of these little critters set up. So I'm going to leave this screen here. No, we're not. We'll click on it. So if I click on the resource, it's going to open up the usual bladed Azure interface you're used to. And so then you can see all the different functionality. I can go in here and tune all the settings, all of those fun things. But the one that you're going to care about the most while you're on this screen is this access keys. So go ahead and click on that. And in a minute, we're going to come back. We're going to need this key. And don't worry, I'm just going to delete this Azure Blob Storage instead of trying to hide my keys or mess with that. I always screw it up. So instead, when I finish the video, I'm going to delete this so you guys can't steal my keys. You can try, but it's not going to work. All right. So that was step one. We got the Azure side deployed, right? We've created the resource and we're up and running. So the next thing I want you to do is open another tab, go to your favorite search engine. Mine is Bing, of course. And we're going to search for the Azure Storage Explorer. And so then after you get through the ads, right here is a link to the Azure Storage Explorer. And so then it says, hey, download Storage Explorer for free, right? And there's a different operating system. So if you're on a Mac or Linux, you probably wouldn't be watching this video. But you have the different options. So I'm obviously going to choose Windows. So I'm going to say download the Storage Explorer. And then this is going to download a 113 meg file, which I don't need because I've already installed and deployed. But if you get it, pull it down, next your way through the install. And then you're going to log in with the same account, the same username and password that you logged into the Azure portal with to get access to it. So I'm going to, it's already done, so I won't cancel the download, but I'm not going to walk you through next finish. I'm just not that guy. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to open up my Azure Storage Explorer. So this is hooked up to my account, and you can see the accounts I was using for testing. I'm going to go up here and say refresh all. And what we should see is under my Visual Studio Enterprise, that was my subscription, right, where I'm paying for this, which is one of the options we had to choose a minute ago. You can see there's the PowerApps 911 video. So you won't see these other ones that I've created under storage accounts because you have not created those yet. But you'll see this one, the one we just made. So then what you can do here is you're going to see you've got blob containers, file shares, queues, tables. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of all this, but there's a lot of fun stuff in here. what we care about is a blob container because we want to store files or store our blobs out there. So under blob containers, I'm going to expand it. There's nothing to expand. So I'm going to say right click on it and say create a blob container. And we're going to name this video demo, right? Just like that. I'm going to hit enter. Boom. We now have a place where we can store files. And with the Azure Storage Explorer here, I can manually upload stuff here. I can create folders. I can populate content via the Storage Explorer. And for some of you, that's a very handy component of this, right? So instead of these files being lost in some other tool, you have a nice way to come in here and sort, filter, and do things with these files, which we're going to come back to in a minute. But now that we've got this video demo blob container created, and we've got the Azure Storage account set up, I think we're ready to switch back to PowerApps and do the things that we like to do. So over here, I'm going to go to my PowerApps. I'm going to say create me a tablet app because I always like tablet apps. I think you guys figured that out by now. I will log in with my account. I will also get rid of this little guy. And so there you go. After a few seconds, we've agreed with our blank canvas. So what we're going to do is we're going to say view data sources because we need to add the Azure Blob Storage data source. So add a data source. We're going to say new connection. And we're going to scroll down here a bit, and somewhere in here is Azure Blob Storage. Now, there is Azure File Storage. That is something different, right? And so that doesn't work the same, so you don't want to get that one. There's a lot of Azure-y stuff in here. We want this nice, pretty purple one, right? Purple for PowerApps, but the Azure Blob Storage. So then it says, hey, what is your Azure Storage account name? So you can get that from a few places. Easiest place is, right, I switch back over to our Azure portal. So there was my name. I'll just highlight that, copy it. Oh, wrong way. Wrong way. Let's close this guy. We don't need that anymore. Right here. So we're going to paste this in right here. And then what is your access key? Oh, we don't need that window either. And so here's my fancy little access key. So I'm going to copy it. And then I can go right here and paste it in and say create. Cross our fingers. Boom. After like 10 or 5 or 7 seconds, it created us a data connection to Azure Blob Storage. And so the Azure Blob Storage, it is another one of those, it's not a tabular data source, right? It's not one like SharePoint. We can just hook it up to a gallery and boom, there's our data. It's going to do everything with these functions, right? The function calls are what's going to go out there and get the data. And so I think first things first, let's just show you how to upload a file. I think that's the first thing you want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert media and add a picture. Now, the other important thing about this method is this works 100% the same whether you were doing it with the add media image or the camera control. I know there's some other videos out there that have talked about doing like saving files off to SQL, but those videos actually only work if you use the camera control. They don't work with the add media control. So you got to kind of be careful and pick and choose your spots. But as far as I know, the Azure Blob Storage works with both, or not as far as I know it does, works well with both, and we don't have any of the issues, and it's the fastest. That's why I keep wanting to tell you guys about it. Okay, so there's a control. I'm going to add a text input here as well. And so, because what we're going to do is text inputs let people add their name. And then we're going to add a button. Looks like about like that. And so then, let's see, my text input, I'm going to do a little cleanup here real quick. Hint text is, let's see, type file name with extension. Unfortunately, with the with this control, there's no way to get the file name of the file they uploaded, so we just have to have the user type in a file name, or we could auto-generate a file name for them, but that'll be a little trickier when I talk about it in a second. And so then this button will be Save to Azure. All right, just like that, looks good. And so let me check my notes, make sure I'm doing all this right. Hang on. All right, so far so good. So let's go to my button. And what we're going to do is start typing in our little thing. We're going to say Azure Blob Storage and boom. And then what do we want to do? We want to create a file. Seems pretty good. All right, now it says, what is your folder path? This took me a minute to figure out the first time. Well, that's why we have our friend, the Azure Blob Storage. And so our folder is this blob container. And so that is going to be video demo. Okay, so right, remember that folder we created called video demo right there? So what we're going to do, go up here, we're going to put it in quotes. We're going to say video demo, just like that. What is the name of the file? Well, we're going to do text input 1 dot text. Don't be judgy that I didn't name it. I know I should have, but what do you do? And then finally, it's going to say what's the last thing. Oh, I want the file. What we're going to do is we're going to say we want the add media button 1, or media with image 1. Add media button 1 dot media. Close our parentheses. So that is our little chunk of code. Okay. So then now let's hit our play. Let's try this out. So I'm going to click on this. Now remember, when you click on this, it offers you all of your images. So we'll choose this little fancy one of Chewy in the snow. But if I hit this drop down here, we can definitely go to all files. Because we can upload, we don't have to just do images. We can do Excel files and PDFs and Word docs and all that. So we're going to say open. So there's picture Chewy playing in the snow. And we'll call this chewysnow.jpg. Yeah, we got like 8 or 9 inches this morning. It was crazy. So we're going to say save to Azure. We're going to cross our fingers. Oh, it's already done. I didn't even have time to cross my fingers. So let's go back to our Storage Explorer. And if we say refresh right here, Chewy in the snow. And if we double click on that file, what will happen is it will actually open that file. So you can see down there at the bottom, it's opening it. And I didn't have that portion set up. I should have. But if I drag this over here, whoops, a little blip there. I said Chewy's name too many times. He started barking, so a little spice. Anyway, you can see that it downloaded that image to my machine and I was able to access it. So with the Azure Storage Explorer here, we're able to work with these files and see our hard work from over in PowerApps pay off. All right, but you probably don't want to just see them here, right? You want to see them back in PowerApps. I think that's a fair thing for you to ask. So let's go back over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second screen because I figured this problem out earlier. So new screen. And so on this screen, we're going to have a gallery, a vertical. And so then here, what we need to do is we need to put in our function for our items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat and just paste it in. But so here you can see it is Azure Blob Storage .list root folders v2 .value. What this is going to do is show you all of the different folders available in this connection. So if you had multiple, remember over here, right? So if I went over here and had created another blob container, then I'm going to see all of those blob containers listed here. So this isn't actually something that is super like we really want, but what I really need out of here is I need the ID. And so, I don't know, for me, I found this was the easiest way for me to grab the ID. So I just want to hit play. This is the ID of the container. Oh, make sure I highlight it. So capital J to a V, copy that, boom. So then now, because what I really wanted was I want to see the items in there. So instead we're going to say Azure Blob Storage. And then there should be something for list folder. And so, right, if we type in LIS, what we see is list folder v2 and list root folder v2. So list root folder is what we just used to find our ID. So what we want to do now is we want to use list folder v2. We're going to paste in that code, make sure we put it inside of quotes. And then we're going to do this. And then you need to also do .value at the end. I always forget that part. So .value, so you can see that it's happy. Oh, chewysnow.jpg. So we're getting pretty close, right? We are moving right along. And so I'm going to change this. I don't need to see Chewy's ID. I want to see Chewy's path because that'll be relevant to us. So video demo Chewy Snowy JPEG. But then for the image, right now it's showing us a sample image. I'm certain we don't want that. What we really want to do is we want to see Chewy's image. And so to see Chewy's image, we're going to say Azure Blob Storage, get file content. What is the ID? Well, how about this item.id? We'll give it a second. Look at that. There is Chewy's image pulling through. So how about that? So now we've uploaded a file and we've then figured out how to turn around and show the file back over here. So if we go back over to screen 1 and let's change picture. So we'll just do play. We'll say change picture. We'll grab this picture of Nicola. She'll be happy to know she was in the video. We'll say open. And then we'll call this Nicola.jpg, save to Azure, boom. And so then if we go back over to the screen 2, which I guess we should just add a button for, right? So button, And so what does this button do? This is just going to navigate screen 2, do a cover like so, boom, and we'll copy this button because we'll need it over on the other screen too. Hold down the Alt key, press the button, paste this over here. Now wait a minute, we only see Chewy. Why don't we see Nicola? I'm going to change this navigate button before I get to navigate to screen 1. So the reason is because this particular function doesn't just automatically refresh the data source, right? Back to that whole I told you earlier, it's not a tabular data source, it's a function-driven data source. So the easiest way to deal with this, I'm going to grab this code. We know that produces the right items for us. So I'm going to say Control-C. And then I'm going to click on the screen, and I'm going to say, all right, screen, every time you become visible, what I want you to do is I want you to do clear collect. So create me a collection called collect files. Paste that code in, and then close my things. So that'll create a collection with all those same contents. And so then now up here, instead of items, what we're going to do is I'm going to say collect files. And after a moment, it should do. But you can see right now it's broken. Why? Because onVisible only triggers when the screen becomes visible. So if we leave the screen, go back to screen 1, go back to screen 2, there's our items. So there's my pretty wife. There's my messy dog. We are just moving right along. So just remember, onVisible, that's Microsoft's, favorite way right now to kind of have things load. Probably 9 times out of 10, what I would do instead of having code on onVisible, I probably would have put it on this button to navigate to the other screen. It's kind of a personal preference, but their official guidance is onVisible, so that's why I did it. And if you're not familiar with collections, if you're like, whoa, 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 what just happened? I was following this collection stuff came up. There's several other videos. I'll link to it below that explain collections if you're new to those. But hopefully at this point, if you're thinking about things like storage and optimized storage in the Azure Blob Storage, you've probably done collections. So that's why I'm not going to talk about them too much right now. Okay, so the last piece of this, though, is I promised you that we'd be able to interact with other types of files. So let's go back to screen 1. And let's say change picture. Now let's get rid of this whole. So right now you notice that this control, it says things like change picture and all that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on the one called Add Media button. And so you can see this is where it says tap or click to add a picture. We're going to change this to say add a file. And then there is another change picture text. And we're going to change this to change file. That way it feels a little nicer. Okay. Anyway, not a big deal, just easy little changes to make your app a little nicer. So change file. And so this time I'm going to click on the drop down and change from image files to all files. And I saved a workbook called a workbook, very fancy name. So you can see that this image control doesn't have a way to show the file. But that's okay, we've had this issue forever. But I'm going to now set the name to be excel.xlsx. Saved to Azure. It goes faster than I can even make stupid jokes, which is very sad because I know you guys like my jokes. Those really classy ones. Like, why did suspenders get arrested? For holding up the pants. No. Anyway, go over to screen 2. So now we can see Excel, and the image control is like, hey, I don't know how to show him that, right? I'm getting data, but I don't know how to display that. That is fair. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say add an icon. I'm going to add a little download icon. I found it earlier. I probably already passed it. Let's go back to the top. Download. See, I told you to already pass it. I'm going to throw this icon over here. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, if you click on this one, what do I want to do? I want to do a launch. And then what file do I want to launch? Well, this is an interesting question. So what we need to do is we need to get the URL directly to that particular file. But those files aren't necessarily available yet. So I know, like we can go over here. Oh, nope, not over here. Stay here, right here. So if we open Azure Storage Explorer, do refresh, we'll see our files. I could click on this file and say, all right, copy the URL. So that's the URL. And then if we take that URL and we'll just open a new tab and we try to go to it, well, we can see that that's the way that they come up with a particular URL. So that's good to know. So this portion is the part that doesn't change. That is tied to your Azure Storage account. Remember earlier where I had to make PowerApps 911 video all lowercase. I told you it had to be a proper name. It's because they use that as your DNS entry. They configured it all for me, but that is how we interact with these files. Okay, so that'll be relevant in a minute. We'll come back to that. So let's hit enter and open this Excel file. Womp, womp, womp. Why can't I open this Excel file? I'm glad you asked. The reason I can't open this Excel file is if we go back over to our Storage Explorer and we right click on our blob containers. Oh, nope, not our blob container, our actual container we made. Set public access level. By default, there is no public access, means those URLs will not work. Okay, so how do you handle that? Well, there's two different options. There's probably more than two. There's two ways we're going to look at it. I'm going to cancel out of this for a minute. We're not going to change this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this Excel XLX. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say get shared access signature. And I'm going to say, all right, make this signature good for basically 24 hours. Read and list the files. And I'm going to go ahead and make it so that the, you can use this key to be accessing your files. So I'm going to say create. So then now if I copy this URL, so I'm going to hit copy. Let's open up our browser again. Paste in a new tab. What happened was they took that URL that we were using, right? This is a URL that didn't work. And they're appending this query string that has the date and timestamp and this giant code that determines whether or not you can see the file. So if we hit enter now, you can see my Excel file started to download. So I have the ability in the Solution Explorer to create these shared access signatures. And so what I can do is I can just grab this particular key, and anytime I append this key to the back of a file, while the key's still valid, I'll be able to access it. Kind of makes sense? All right, let's switch back over to our app and see if we can kind of put that into play. So over here in my app, what I want to do is I want to go to right here. So when I download, I'm going to need this URL. So this portion right here. So copy off this. And notice when I copy this in, so I'm going to put it in quotes. And I'm going to get rid of that trailing slash. I want it to end at .net. And I'm going to say, and this item dot path. Okay. So that right there will automatically make the URL that we're expecting to see, right? So and the easiest way, if you don't believe me, because I know sometimes you guys don't trust me, if I copy this, Control C, just go over here and change this label. Oh, delete everything out of this label. You can see the URL that is getting generated. If I make it so you can see it. Oh my goodness, it's too big. Home, 12 font, still too big. Trust me, that is the URL that we need, right? So then now that I put that URL into this button and I've used the launch function, what that's going to do is hand that URL to my browser, and then my browser is going to do whatever it knows how to do with that particular file. Now, what's going to happen though is we don't have that key on the end yet, okay? So if we go back over to our Solution Explorer and we grab this query string, because this query string is going to be the same for all the files. So we're going to copy that, close out of this thing. And so then now if we go back to our app, so we're going to say, I want all of that, and in quotes, that crazy path. And so if we copy all of this, Control C, put this in our label. So what is the text for our label? Right here. We're going to be able to see that that looks like a crazy enough URL to just work. So let's hit play. Let's click on this file. Hey, look, we now see Chewy via the actual URL. Because the browser says, oh, image files, I just show those to you. But if we go back, so we close that. If we click on the Excel file, the browser says, well, I can't just show you an Excel file. So it went ahead and downloaded the Excel file. So if you did a PDF, I don't know what will happen with PDF. Let's go try. It's going to depend on what my machine is configured. So change file. We want all files, and then we want this blank employee plan PDF like that. We'll call this blank.pdf. We'll save it to Azure. We'll jump over to the other screen. And so then there's blank PDF. We'll click on the download link. And because my browser is configured to show PDFs, I see the PDF. That's actually pretty darn cool, right? And so what I would do if I was really building this solution, well, one is typically I know the file types, right? Whether the customer is wanting to store a bunch of images. So then if it's images, I'm using the image control, that's great. Or they're doing Excel files and PDFs and stuff, and then I'm just giving them the download and not doing the image. But you could also do some conditional formatting. So maybe if the image, if there's an image file that the image controller can show, so if it's a .jpeg file, then we show the image box. If it's not a .jpeg, we show the little download icon, right? You guys are pretty smart at this point. You mix and match your conditional formatting to show the right things here. But hopefully this is kind of helping you wrap your head around. This is a great, super fast way to deal with files stored out in the cloud and work with them from PowerApps. Now, the last question you might give me is, well, what if I wanted to not use this control, but I want to use the image control? Fair question. So insert media, the camera control. And so then here we'll change this to camera 1, which is over there. Hi. Right, you guys are now seeing me from stage left. Do I look more handsome or less handsome? Nah. Anyway, all right, so then now that we've got that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to set the stream rate, because this is how I usually get photos out of the camera control. 100, like that. And so then now we'll change this button and we'll say, or here, we'll just copy this button. We'll make our own version. Control C. So we'll put this one down here. Camera to Azure. And so then all you have to do with this one, well, we're just going to hard code the file name as Shane.jpg because I'm lazy and I don't feel like hooking all that up again. Like that. And then instead of using the add media output, we're just going to say camera1 dot stream. Okay. And so then now if we hit play, I'll make a silly face. And so then now if we go to screen 2, that's a terrible face. But we're able to get controls out. And so this is one of the big differences for me between some of these other methods I've seen out there. A lot of them don't work with both the change file control and the media control or the camera control. And another thing I'll remind you real quick, I know I need to stop talking in this video, but the last thing I'll remind you is that file size matters, right? This image control or the camera control that's built in, it takes tiny pictures, 200, 300K pictures. If you use the add media control and it's on their iPhone or Android device, it might take an 8 meg picture. Uploading 8 meg files versus uploading 300K files can be a huge difference. One of poor Daryl, right, who we're talking to, his guys are out there, they barely have cell service. So for them, file size matters. But what Daryl's saying right now is the other thing they have, though, is this image, the reason it is so much smaller is just because it is a lower resolution. And the resolution of the pictures it takes isn't good enough for the solution he needs, so he has to use this solution. So then that's why we learned all about Azure Blob Storage. Ah! I know. Okay, I have rambled a lot. I am going to continue to make content, though, because storing files is one of those really hard things that we all suffer from. But I can tell you that all the content we're about to make, Azure Blob Storage, to me, is going to be the fastest solution. Oh, last thing I want to show you, over in Storage Explorer, if you right-click on this file and say Set Public Access Level, and set this to Public Read, apply. If we go back over here, remember this picture did not work, right? It's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Or if we do, what was it? It was like Chewy Snow. ChewySnow.jpg. Yep. Right. If we do just that URL without the key, this file will now work. So this is the easiest way to do it, right? Just turn on public access. But are you concerned? Are you worried that people are going to steal your pictures of Chewy? It's a real problem. Chewy's a celebrity these days. So just make sure that you understand the ramifications. There is so much going on in this Azure Blob Storage you need to learn about. So bite it off in tiny little chunks. But just know that I think this is going to be our answer for where I think you should store your files. I know it's my answer. So, all right. As always, if I can do anything to help you, be sure to hit me up with PowerApps 911. Tweet me, leave me comments. Oh my goodness, so many comments. I appreciate your comments, but they're a lot of work. But that's okay. Keep leaving the comments. I enjoy them. Or if you want to spend a few days with me one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but one to a small group, I teach training classes. So the next one's coming up the end of February. They've been super popular because we work on building apps, and it's not for people who are 101 level. It's for people, we have a 101 level class. But my favorite class is this one where I take people that have built apps and help them go from, I can kind of understand what PowerApps does, to here's how we build production solutions, here's how we worry about performance, here's how we scale things, here's how we build repeatable solutions, and really try to take them from, here to the moon. So anyway, that's a whole bunch. I'm done talking. Thanks, and have a great day. Hey, it's me again. If you got a second, click the subscribe button. That always keeps me making more videos. Or if you want to work together, need some help getting your Power Apps going, hit me up at PowerApps 911. Always happy to work together. Or finally, if you're really just looking for more videos, that's probably what it is, check out the Power Apps playlist over here and enjoy that. All right, thanks, and have a great day.